Hello and welcome to another wonderful episode of Two Drink Maximum. I'm your host, Chase.
I'm your other host, Shane.
Today we're joined by someone that's going to heal all that ails you. We're joined by Chris Shelton, the Hollywood healer, practicer of Qigong, and so many things that I can't even list them all right now. But his clients include people like Channing Tatum, my apologies to Channing Tatum, I said his name wrong. Right. Channing Tatum, Patrick Schwarzenegger, Herschel Walker, Chad Kroeger of Nickelback fame. Is a member of many organizations here in the Los Angeles area. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Wow. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to have you. So as we like to start the show off, tell us, what are we drinking this evening?
So my drink of choice these days is the Olippops. And I love these Olippops mainly because they taste so good. There's very little sugar in them. That's number one.
Yeah.
They have probiotics in them as well too. And they taste so good. I mean the flavor, like I said, they had one called Dr. Feel Good or Dr.
I really hope it's Dr. Good.
Yeah.
Dr.
If
something.
you start with Doctor, everybody knows what you're trying to go for here. Yeah.
Anyways, it tastes just like Dr. Pepper, but it has plant based. It's all plant based, but you drink it, you're like, this is not plant based. This is a fake. There must be something fake about it, but it's actually really good. And so this is my drink of choice right now.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's give it a
Give
try.
it a try. We've all got different flavors here. I've got the tropical punch.
I have classic grape,
Nice.
I have the cola.
just
The
cola.
Vintage cola.
Nice. There we go. Let's give it a try here. Oh, that's pretty good.
How was
Oh,
that?
that's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. How does the grape taste like grape?
So my one level on judging anything that's grape flavored is whether or not it tastes like Dimetap, which is a good thing
What a low bar.
because I like the taste of Dimetap for no reason.
That's so funny.
But this is very good. It is a very fresh grape taste. You're right. You
Yeah,
were
it's pretty
saying
good.
earlier.
It's like back in the day, you used to drink Welch's grape soda.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And these are great because obviously, there's a lot of people who love soda, right? But it's, but obviously soda is not that healthy for you. It's full of sugar and stuff. So if you can swap it out with this is a good way to go.
Yeah.
And it contains probiotics. Could you tell us what a probiotic is?
So our digestive system, we need these probiotics that aid in digestion. We not only have these in our stomach, but also in our intestinal tract as well. We need these probiotics in order to help to digest our food properly. And if there's a disruption of that, then we could end up with all kinds of conditions. Colitis, Crohn's disease, IBS. We could have acid reflux, also referred to as GERD. So there's a number of things that could actually show up. So probiotics in I guess the Olippops is kind of like a cheater's way of getting the probiotics.
Yeah, that's true.
The better
The
way.
Flintstones gummies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I took my vitamins as a kid. But the better way, honestly, is to have like kimchi or sauerkraut, those
Right.
types of
Fermented
things.
type stuff.
Fermented
right?
type stuff. But you don't want to overdo it because a lot of times people say, okay, well, you have to have your probiotics and they'll go haywire. They'll go too far on the other side. So you just want to eat enough. You don't want to have to overindulge because then you create other problems as well too. So it's a balance. Everything's a balance.
Nice. Well, with that, I'm going to take another sip real
They're
quick
really
because these are a lot better than I thought they were going to be. So I'm thrilled. Yeah.
And I can convince myself that I'm being healthy while I drink a soda, so that's
drink
always a
juice.
plus.
So, as we kind of said at the top of the show, you obviously work with a lot of very talented people, a lot of impressive groups and all those things. And you've obviously reached a certain pinnacle of success in your career, but you started from a very different place, right? And it seems like, from what we can tell, the start of your story was that you started off with a bit of a rough childhood.
Yeah, I grew up, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, from San Jose originally. And, I grew up in an abusive, there's a lot of neglect inside the house. And it was both parents. It wasn't just one, and the interesting thing about it too, it wasn't all the time. Like, I do have some peaceful memories, and stuff like that. But for the most part, for example, I was locked out of the house. We came inside, I got beat. And I was so afraid as a kid to get beat for something that, you just learn to keep your mouth shut. Like one time I was leaving Kmart. Remember the old cars back in the 70s, they had those heavy doors and stuff like that. So my younger brother was sitting in the front seat, it was one of those bench style seats.
Yeah,
right?
of
Remember
course.
back in the day.
The
And
super safe kind.
yeah.
No seatbelts. Yeah.
No seatbelts. That's the key here.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no seatbelts. And also my younger brother was in a car seat, and the bottom of the car seat was shaped like a half moon, but it was not strapped in. So anyways, my mom shut the car door, right, and locked it, shut the car door while I accidentally hit the handle, opened up the door. But I knew if I said, "Mom, I opened up the car door, I would have got beaten at Kmart parking lot. So I held on to it. My little 35-pound self.
Wow.
Right? Or whatever I was weighing at the time. I was really small, right? And sure enough, she goes taking off and then goes around a corner about 40 miles an hour. The door flies open. I fly out. I grab something. I grab my younger brother. Flies out as well, too.
Oh, no.
So the last thing I remember is him flying over me. He lands because, like I said, the bottom of his car seat or his baby seat was shaped like a half moon. So he kind of skidded. I face planted into the pavement.
No.
I jumped to turn around. My mom was totally unaware that I was gone. That both of us were gone.
Oh, my.
She's leaving, right? So then we almost get hit by a van. He swerves around us. And finally some lady, comes and stops and comforts us and stuff like that. And, but yeah, that was the childhood. And so, you have to, because there's difficulty with money and those kinds of things. So I know what it's like to have the freeze-dried milk, the processed block of cheese. Government cheese, So, but anyways, so by age 12, I started doing drugs. And then...
12, wow.
Yeah, and so my mom left my dad for some other guy, and my second cousin moved in, and he was a cowboy, biker type guy, and so all my friends became... his crowd. So I had access, plus I was working, so I had access to the drugs. But there was something about me, though, that was highly motivated and driven. I mean, so by age 11, though, I was already working for a podiatrist in Milpitas, California, and one in Campbell. So I'd ride my bike on the weekends, like 60 miles.
Whoa.
Round trip in one weekend, 45 to 60 miles, just to work for them. And part of the things, besides cleaning their offices, that I would do is that I actually would go door to door through East San Jose and hand out flyers and leaflets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Street level marketing. Represent.
Yeah, that's the old school
version of it. Yeah.
And nobody gave me any mace. So when I go to these doors and the dogs come chasing after me, I finally realized, like, I can grab.
You learn to be fast.
Well, it's kind of fast, but also grab a can of air freshener.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have Febreze back then, but the other ones, right? Yeah, like
Glade, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and if spraying it didn't work, I'd just throw it at them. But anyways.
Yeah.
Resourceful.
Yeah.
So anyways, so that was, that was the norm. And then, so finally, coming into my senior year of high school, I had my first heart attack. If anybody's ever had a heart attack before, it's one of the most painful things. It's so hard to breathe. In fact, one half of me wanted just to die.
Wow.
So what happened was that I heard the doctor in the emergency room talking to my father outside the curtain, and he said, well, because your son is so young, that's the only reason why he survived this. If he was any older, he would have died from it.
Yeah.
And he got a hold of some bad stuff. So 18 years old, I was like, well, I've gotten a hold of stuff that never gotten me off before, but I got some bunk stuff before, but nothing has ever done this. So, a couple months later, what happened was that I used again, had another heart attack, this one much more minor. But this day, because of the shame and guilt around the first one, I didn't call 911 that day. I was just going to die.
Good Lord.
And so, sure enough, the cardiologist confirmed there was a second heart attack, and he said, Chris,
and you knew it was coming, or you knew it was happening. I
knew it was happening.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I just laid in my bed, okay, this is it. We're done. And the cardiologist said, unfortunately, Chris, because of your age, we don't know what kind of damage that you've done. You may not just wake up one day. I realized, man, Chris, you're going to end up dead, in prison, or both. So I put myself into Taekwondo to change my path. And then I started competing full contact right away. And one night before a match, I was accidentally kicked in the low back and left me with a devastating back injury. And doctors were saying, Chris, if you don't have spinal surgery, you move the wrong way, you might not ever have sex again, and you might not walk again. And so another doctor, her name is Dr. Nancy Bergman, she had another idea, and she had a therapist working for her, and he was a martial artist, and he started talking to me about Qi. Now, this is over 30 years ago. The closest thing to Qi that I was going to get was like Cheez-Its and Cheese Whiz.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Qi what?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. And, this is over 30. So nobody back then was really talking about Qigong. I mean, Bruce Lee was making Kung Fu, big, Oakland, because they had the studio in Oakland and stuff like that, right? But Tai Chi maybe, but nobody was talking about Qigong back then. anyways, I started taking these classes, and you only had a couple women in the class, a very small class. And because I was healing my back, I was like, well, I got nothing else to do, so I'm just going to do these practices. And I kid you not, but within 6 months, I could not tell you the day, but it's all of a sudden the realization of, man, when did I stop living on the Sudafed? When did I stop living on all these medications?
Right.
I couldn't tell you a pinpoint date. So I thought, man, if a simple, specific meditation and movement could do this to me, there must be something to the medicine. So that's how I started studying classical Chinese medicine.
Yeah. I mean, there's such an interesting, right? I mean, Western medicine it's rigorous, right? And it's clinically tested and there's all these things, and that's great. It needs to be. But it leaves this kind of massive gap for, there's little room for any alternative medicine or any kind of like other practices. And there's this massive gap where people are missing out on, healing practices and healing techniques because they're just not FDA approved, or they're this, they're that, or whatever. But I think what's so cool about some of the things that you teach is that it seems like your approach is more of an inside out kind of approach, right? Where Western medicine is a lot more outward in.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do your due diligence, trying to self-diagnose and such, and going on Wikipedia and trying to figure that out.
WebMD is like the worst. Yeah.
Everything's killing you.
Yeah, or you hear some 13-year-old TikTokers say that, tell you how to fix your neck or whatever, or that if you have vertigo, if you stick button mushrooms in your ears, that'll fix your vertigo. I mean, there's some crazy stuff out there too. But you make a great point, is that, because I believe in integrative medicine. I mean, there's some things that science can do that we can't touch. But if all they want to do is to medicate you or cut you open or to cut something off, that's where I started looking into alternative means.
Which is like 90% of the time for most medicine.
Oh, the stories that I hear, like TMJ, like I had one client that she had TMJ where the person grinds their teeth.
Yeah.
And they wanted to cut off part of her upper palate of her mouth. They wanted to break her jaw to reset her jaw. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, what? Is that absurd?
Yeah.
I mean, if I need a heart lung transplant, I'm not going to see someone like me. I'm going to a specialist, because that there is magic. The fact that you could do a heart lung transplant.
Yeah.
But why don't you ask the deeper question of what is causing the grinding of the teeth to begin with? There's a deeper...
Right, go deeper inwards, right?
Go in there, yes. And the thing of it is that my philosophy is self-empowerment. Because if I could empower you to understand that you are actually the master of your own body, you just need a little bit of education on, like, what are the symptoms and the signs and what do they mean? And more importantly, how to fix it yourself. Man, that's powerful. That's power. That's giving the power back to the people, right? When you're able to show somebody a technique that that gets them out of pain or reverses the disease process. Jim Rohn is one of my favorite speakers, on financial independence and character building, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, he on one of his talks, he had said, if you buy a book on how to prevent a heart attack and it costs you $19.95, you're paying for the ink, the publishing, the pages. But if you have a book that can keep you from having a heart attack, that's priceless. You can't put a price tag on it.
Yeah.
And in the classical Chinese medicine, there's a Chinese medicine book called The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Difficulties, or the Su Wen. And the Yellow Emperor said, in order to fight disease before disease or after disease sets in, is like digging a well after one has become thirsty, or forging one's weapons after engaging in battle. Wouldn't that be too late?
Yeah.
So the whole idea is, let's educate people on what these little signs and symptoms are, and then what are the remedies that we could do in order to fix it, right? In order to remedy it yourself. The whole idea then is you become your own superior doctor. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that you stop seeing your regular physician. No, because you still need to. Any of the practices I recommend, I say talk to your doctor first. But what it means is that you become so in tune with your body, and especially your pain body, your emotional body, that you're able to understand where these symptoms are, where they stem from, and then how to remedy it. And that's the cool thing about Qigong, or the style of Qigong that I teach anyways, is for mental health. And because mental health, that's a whole nother subject. But the emotional component that shows up as acid reflux or creating acid reflux or creating hives on the skin or something like that. What is the emotional component? So we start to teach people, okay, well, this is the connection, and here's these practices you could do. And these practices are thousands of years old. I didn't make them up. They've been handed down. And what I tell people, they say, oh, it's some kind of, bogus, pseudoscience, or whatever. I'm like, anything that's fake has a way of doing itself in. Right?
True.
It'll fold eventually.
It'll fold eventually. But this has been around for thousands of years. Why do you think that China, the Communist Party, outlawed the practice? They imprisoned or tortured a lot of the masters there when they first took over. Why?
Really?
Because they were threatened of the people having the power, self-knowledge, self-care.
Right, to make themselves better, right? To make themselves happier and healthier.
And I want to ask, what are some of the core tenets or practices inside of Qigong?
So there's different styles of Qigong. There's the self-regulation practices, or the medical school, which is a style that I teach for mental health. There's a martial arts school. In fact, about 2 years ago, Black Belt Magazine in Germany had me translate a letter that Bruce Lee had written to himself, because Bruce Lee used to practice Qigong.
Nice.
So what I did in this article for Black Belt Magazine is I talked about what Bruce Lee was talking about, what types of practices he was talking, specific meditations in order to harness this internal power. Because you heard of him being able to do like the 1-inch punch, right?
Yeah.
That's from internal power. That's internal, right? And so anyways, it was really cool because I was able to do this translation. But there are specific moving practices of Qigong. There's specific guided meditations. So what I love about Qigong is that there's two components. A lot of us have heard of mindfulness meditation. And that's very powerful. So Qigong encompasses that, but also what it encompasses too is an active part of it. So every single practice that I teach is meant to do something medicinally inside your body. More importantly, what it's meant to do is that it's also meant to be able to give you tools to deal with certain emotional traumas that go on in your life. So for example, like as a keynote speaker, I give talks. I just gave a talk to the LA County Unified School District, to the Crisis Symposium.
Nice.
And they invited me out once again. I did for the homicide unit for LAPD and such. And
a tense bunch of folks, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, what they have to see and what they have to experience on a day-to-day basis, I mean, it's mind-blowing. And just to hold all that stuff in. So anyways.
Just the tension in your body alone is
just
probably,
that tension in your body alone. Just the adrenaline ups and then dumps. And then if you're working homicide or, teenage homicide, I mean, my God, I really feel for those men and women that do that line of work, because that's not an easy job. But the nice thing about Qigong is that, and what they appreciated was, it gave a tool right away. So for example, when I give a talk, I give 3 takeaways. One of the takeaways is a conscious breath. So when people say to me, well, Chris, I can't meditate. My mind is going like a hamster on a hamster wheel. I say, okay, start off with a conscious breath. Because when you inhale and exhale, during that breath, it's impossible for you to think of anything else. Impossible. You can't.
Yeah.
And nobody breathes right. Nobody on the planet breathes right.
Correct. They're all chest breathers. Yeah,
They're
right.
in those little puffs all the time. They don't even know it.
Yeah. So one of the regulations of Qigong is to fully expand the abdomen, front, back, left, and right. I mean, if you watch a newborn baby, that newborn baby uses its abdomen to breathe. Just
a reflex, right?
Yeah, but as we get older, because of dietary habits or lifestyle habits and emotional trauma, that breath becomes very shallow. And a lot of people don't realize that these internal organs, the thing about deep abdominal breathing is that your visceral cavity, your organs, get the gentle massage work that it needs by abdominal breathing. And so when we stop doing that, the breath has become shallow. Guess what? Then we start seeing, things like inflammation, constipation, those types of things, right? So there's so many things that could come up. And so conscious breath is one. The second practice I like to give is called shaking the tree, or shake it off, like the Taylor Swift song.
Yeah.
because we are the only animal or mammal on land that does not shake it off when something happens.
We hold on to it.
We hold on to it.
Yeah.
Somebody cuts you off. What do? You might flip them in the bird, but then you're,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But then you're stewing about
You're
it
stewing
for 10,
about
15
it.
minutes. Yeah,
Right, right. And so animals do it, though. If a dog is happy to see you or the dog is angry, that dog will shake from head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
If two ducks get into a fight, they swim around the pond, they or swim away from each other. And the first thing they do is they violently flap their wings.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they're conscious enough to know that they have that vibration. They may not know that it's anger or rage or whatever, but they're conscious enough to know, like, oh, all right, I'm going to just flap this thing off.
Excess energy in my
Yeah,
system.
I got something, right? Because otherwise, if they were like humans, they'd swim around the pond waiting for Bob to come around to pop them in the beak, right?
Yeah.
Go tell the other ducks, did you see what
Yeah,
he did?
did you
Yeah,
see?
Now let him finish, because the thing is, I don't want you to take the wrong thing away, Chase. I'm going to catch you just flapping your arms the next time.
Every
you're upset.
time I
Like, hold
talk
on.
to you.
I don't know if that was exactly the point he was making.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's the practice: is you shake from head to toe, and one of the cool things about this too, because some people think, oh, because of what I do for a living, I've been doing this now for 30 years. That my wife and I, because she's my business partner in crime with this.
Who's here today? Hello.
Hello, hi.
Quietly in the wings.
They think that we just sit at home and meditate and eat vegetables all day. And
Sounds fairly boring. I somehow doubt that's the case. Yeah.
the reality is that we do have a very blessed life, and but we have the same BS as everybody else does. And I remember one day, it was a Wednesday. Wednesdays are packed normally, really busy days, and we had somebody from Illinois that was staying with us. They had their 18-year-old staying with us. I was mentoring him. I was coaching. I had patients that day. I had classes that day. And my oldest daughter, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm cooking breakfast. And my oldest daughter texts me. She went to college on a wrestling scholarship.
Nice.
And she texts me, "Is it okay if I punch Uncle Donnie in the face?" I said, "Sure, but why?"
A little more context, please. But
And I was the trustee on my father's estate, power of attorney for my father who had a stroke, who was a veteran. And
Thank you for your service.
yeah, thank you. He had was going in to have his toe amputated, so I thought, well, while he has his toe amputated, I'm going to remodel his kitchen. So that way, when he comes back, he has a brand new kitchen. He bought this house in like 1972, so I had all the old tile,
all the neon green,
yellows and stuff.
Yeah,
Beautiful
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, those horrific pastel colors that everybody had in the 70s. Yeah.
Vintage.
And so, sure enough, yeah, he had sent. So I sent a family email like a few days before this text message from my daughter, and telling the family the condition of our father and stuff like that. And I pulled the plug on this, right? And so.
Right.
He had sent this nasty condescending email threatening lawsuits, have me kicked off the trust, all kinds of things. And and instead of responding, what I did was that I did that shaking in the tree practice, shake it off practice.
Yeah.
Because when the thought would come, it's one thing for the thought to come into your mind about something, but when you feel it creating that angst, right? That's when you shake it off. So throughout the day, I had to shake it off several times and just to let it go. And I didn't respond to the email. It's like, you can't talk to stupidity. You can't reason to stupidity, right? But the third practice, and this is one of the most powerful practices, is the heart healing sound. Because the heart is the emperor of the body, or empress of the body. That heart dictates how much an emotion will be expressed or suppressed. And what's really cool, you guys can look this up. There's a group of scientists in Santa Cruz, I think actually in Felton, that called Heart Math, and they have proven that our consciousness is here in the heart. For years, science has always tried to put it
brain.
in the brain. In the brain. It's not in the brain. When two people, what they've proven is when two people give a sincere hug, not one of those half arm, one arm hugs. Like
The dap, right?
Yeah. Elbow bump.
Shoulder check, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
When people give a sincere hug like that, actually both hearts actually move a little bit closer together.
Oh, interesting.
So the heart is emperor of the body, or empress of the body. It's affected by all the emotions. But if you think about it, if you get angry at something, what happens? Your heart races. And then that anger attacks the liver and the gallbladder. We see so many diseases from this. If you lost a loved one, your heart hurts and then it weakens your lungs. if you're worried or anxious about something, your heart will hurt, and then it'll weaken your spleen and your pancreas. It attacks the spleen. If you're fearful of something or had something shocking event, the heart races and then it weakens your kidneys and your bladder. And so the heart healing sound, it is the sound of ha. Because what's really funny in Chinese medicine is that one of the negative emotions that affects the heart is too much joy, overexcitation. They say that you could actually die of a heart attack from laughing too hard. And I had a hard time understanding that.
You had to pick one, though.
Yeah. That's
I'd
the way
rather
to
go by that one.
Yeah. What killed him? Joke. It was
So
just
so funny.
It was just too funny of a joke. Yeah.
He said, pull my finger and then.
Yeah. There are worse ways to go. You're right, dude. Yeah.
But anyways, and if you think about it, if you have a laughing attack at something, what's the first thing that happens? You go,
Yeah.
Why? Because your heart's trying to regain balance again. It's wise enough to know that it needs to regain balance. So that's the practice. You see something or somebody said something to you. I want you to think about it. Who's involved? What was involved? Whether it made you sad, whether it made you angry, whatever. I'm going to want you to imagine a pink or a red cloud filling up into the heart, inhaling. And then as you exhale, and imagine that circumstance leaving like a dark cloud going several feet away from the body and deep into the ground. And do this over and over again. Now, the cool thing about this is that I could do this with past trauma too. So like conventional therapy or unlike conventional therapy, yes, I'm asking you to pick off the scab because I want you to relive the event. But by connecting with the specific organ, the specific Qigong practice, or in this case, the heart healing sound, as you exhale, making the ha sound, now you have an actual practice for which you can now start to release the past stuff that accumulates inside your body. And the nice thing about this too is that you could do it anywhere. Well, the cool thing too is that you could actually do this underneath your breath. So obviously, you're probably not going to be doing the ha outside. Well, maybe some parts of LA and San Francisco, you get away with it. That'd be normal. But
walking around, ha! Ha! I'm fine.
Maybe. Depends on certain parts of LA. Maybe
I'm going to start doing it.
Can't do that in Burbank, but maybe somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's so, so you do the sound underneath your breath, and guess what? Instead of suppressing it, which shows up as inflammation and disease, you have a tool now right away to get rid of it.
I want to go back to ask, right? So after your injury, right, and you kind of find Qigong and it works for you, right? And you kind of feel like, this is a new thing for me. You then eventually you get to the point where you decide, I want to teach this, I want to practice this, I want to show this to other people. How did you kind of come to that decision, right? Because it's one thing to get into something that works for you, but then it's an entirely other decision to make it a profession, to make it a calling. How did you kind of make that transition to say, this is what I want to do with my life?
Wow,
From being healed to healing others is the question.
Yeah. That's an interesting question because, like I said, I was a butcher. I was a butcher for 21 years.
Which is also interesting, just because how many times you talking to your butcher when you're not in the store, but that's fine.
Yeah. So I was a butcher back in the day when we got the hanging cattle sides of beef in and stuff like that, back old school, right? And so for 21 years I had that career. And so I started studying Chinese medicine and stuff. And so I was a meat manager, and so I started studying and stuff, and I was training Qigong underneath this one instructor. I did what was called as a medical Qigong program. I did 8 years of that and such. But also, too, what had happened was that fast forward, I finished the program, and I didn't know how I was going to move forward with it. I was a single father because I'd married, got divorced. So I was a single father. I cut sole custody of my 2 kids. I was a single father of 2 kids, a meat manager. I didn't know, how I was going to transition. And so that's what happened was one night, because after I finished that program, I sat on it for like 2 years. And then this woman one night, her name was Janet, and she said to me, well, you'd be great in our clinic. We have acupuncture, we have chiropractic, and all this kind of stuff, right? And so that was on a Wednesday night. By Friday, out of fear, I talked myself out of it. And for years, what was interesting is that for years, that instructor of mine and his ex-wife now, she's a prominent second-generation acupuncturist, they were telling me, like, Chris, you're a natural at this, you should do this for a living. But I didn't know how I was going to go from being a single father, meat manager, cutting up dead cows all day, managing these knuckleheads to healing people. Like it didn't make any sense, right?
Right. It seems like a pretty big jump to get from A to B, right?
Yeah. And so what happened? Plus, I was living paycheck to paycheck, right? I mean, I would work a lot.
Puts you squarely in the category with many, many Americans, right?
Yeah, paycheck to paycheck. Nice thing about being a butcher, a union butcher, is that I could work overtime at other shops. So I'd work as far as East Palo Alto all the way down to like Monterey or Carmel. That's a commute. Yeah. But that's what I had to do to make sure my kids had food on the table, right? So anyway, I called her up to tell her no out of fear, right? And I seriously, it's going to sound weird, but I heard a voice say to me, "This is your last chance this lifetime." So I took a chance. And I was able to get into a clinic in Los Gatos, California. And then what happened, something I did not expect, is that instructor, because if you do martial arts, there's a loyalty to your grandmaster, your quadrinim, your sifu, shifu, whatever. And so I'm very loyal to my teachers, but all of a sudden he turned on me. And he would say to me, it's one thing to practice Tai Chi and Qigong. It's another thing to run a business. Pat me on the shoulder. Let's see how long you last out there. So if anybody's ever started a business before, people just don't come knocking down your door, right? I'd have one student that knows students. I'd have 2 patients and no patients, right? So my wind was already being sucked out of my sail, right?
Yeah.
And then to have this guy then who was teaching Chinese philosophy, I was like, wait, this isn't Taoism.
Yeah.
That's capitalism.
Yeah.
It's not Taoism. I was questioning everything that I was learning. Everything that I learned, I was questioning everything. At first, it started to take the wind out of my sail, but then what happened was that it actually lit a fire underneath my ass to succeed. It actually propelled me to succeed. Now, I never could have imagined all the amazing things that have happened since then. And so fast forward, what happened was that my old fight coach is Kung Lee. Kung Lee is a former UFC fighter. He fought for his Strikeforce champion, Vietnamese fighter. Okay. And out of San Jose. And he started getting me publicity that I couldn't pay for. Like Showtime was at my office in San Jose. NBC Sports was there. The UFC was there a couple of times. They interviewed me. Vietnamese television, And so what happened then, fast forward, I still didn't know that this was my life purpose yet. It still didn't really dawn on me this was my life purpose. And then what happened was, fast forward, this gentleman by the name of Eric the Trainer, Hollywood physique expert here in Hollywood, by the Burbank Airport. My wife and I happened to be flying down because we had a fitness, besides the Healing Arts studio, we had also a fitness center attached to it. So we had a clinic, we had a Pilates studio, and then we had a big classroom where we taught kickboxing, TRX, Tai Chi, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, we were selling these EFX bands. I don't know if you remember the ball players were wearing those things, they're supposed to help with balance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I asked Coach Kung, I said, Kung, I need some more EFX bands. He said, well, call Eric the Trainer. He's the spokesperson for EFX. So I call Eric. Eric goes, dude, I want to meet you, man. And I said, all right, well, in 2 weeks, my wife and I are flying down to do a fundraiser with Robert Downey Jr. I said, maybe we could meet by LAX, right? And so I meet with him. And Eric was this massive Jewish guy with long blonde hair, but he had such a big heart.
Yeah.
Connector of the people. And he says to me, dude, because that's how he talks, dude, Kung told me about you doing in the Bay Area. Nobody's doing that in Los Angeles. I said, man, Eric, give me a break. There's millions of people in here in LA. He goes, no, I know the who's who. And at first I thought he was full of crap. But no, he started giving me all of his high-profile clients. So what happened was because I had custody, now I gotten married again, second divorce, and now I had custody of the younger kids Monday through Friday. What we started doing was we dropped the kids off at school on Friday. I'd fly out here. I'd see patients Friday, Saturday, Monday morning at the Toluca Lake Country Club. Fly back before the kids got out of school. Did that once or twice a month for 7 years.
Wow.
Just to keep the kids in school up in the Bay Area, right? And stuff like that. And then finally, I had to ask myself, man, why am I killing myself for? My business in the Bay Area is doing great. We had just landed in 2015 these big government contracts that we still have today. And I was like, why am I killing myself for? And I don't get starstruck. I treat everybody the same. Everybody poops and pees the same.
Yeah.
Like
They're all people.
We all put our pants on 2 legs at a time, right? Yeah.
Right.
Just people.
Just people. So I realized that the next stage of my career is television, because in order to get the word out about Qigong and these types of things is through television. And so that's when, well, we had bought our place in Burbank in 2016, but we were still flying back and forth, mainly just living in the Bay Area and such. And then I realized, then I met Maria Shriver, I think, 2014, met Maria Shriver, and she got me involved with the Special Olympics. So I performed Qigong at the Special Olympics World Games for the first time ever. First at Long Beach, because there's a lot of hands in the kitty. They want to make sure, like, who is this guy? Like,
Of course, yeah.
Right?
You can't just waltz into the Special Olympics.
You can't just walk in.
For good reason. Yeah.
They're good. They want to protect their athletes and keep everybody
correct.
A healthy environment for everybody.
Yeah. So I'm teaching the Qigong. One of the things I love about Qigong is that it does not discriminate, because I have video teaching the Korean Taekwondo team. They're all in wheelchairs. Qigong.
Nice.
Right? So the whole idea of the Qigong is to give the athletes, coaches, and their families the tools not only to deal with the stress of competition, but what's interesting, if you've ever worked a Special Olympics event, most athletes there are just really excited to compete.
Yeah.
They're not stressed. Like when I was competing, I would be stressed, like butterflies, and all that.
Happiest people I've ever met in my life.
Totally.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But what do you do if somebody's bullying you? Right? What do you do if you get in an argument with somebody?
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that people with special needs actually have a shorter lifespan than people that don't. And so it's such an empowering thing. And then after that, about a year after that, the Special Olympics started a program called Healthy Athletes, Strong Minds. So we flew to, I think it was Rochester, New York, and we did training there. And so my wife and I are the only clinical directors that are not clinical psychiatrists or psychologists. We're not coming from the brain. We're coming from what's going on inside the body, the emotional state inside of here. And so it's been a blessing, because I could give these tools to these athletes, right, to be able to handle, like the Ha sound I just talked about. You know how cool it is to see 40 or 50 athletes doing the Ha sound together at an event?
Yeah, in sync, I would imagine. Right? That's
so
cool.
It's epic, man. It's totally epic. So then I realized, like, oh wow, this is the mission, right, and stuff like that. But so many amazing things have happened. So I've gotten to meet some crazy, amazing people. I was on tour with Def Leppard and Journey for a little bit,
Nice.
treating the band. Like so many, I remember one time me and Eric were at the Houston Astrodome for sound check.
Yeah.
And they're playing the Astrodome was empty except for security, and they're getting ready for the show and stuff like that. And they're playing Pour Some Sugar on Me. And at some point, I had to pinch myself, like, is this really freaking happening?
Yeah.
How did this butcher, drug addict, artist,
That's amazing.
right?
Yeah.
All this stuff happened. So it's been fun. So now the mission, the mission is that, and with the TV show and stuff like that, with my new books that are coming out, is self-empowerment. Understand how your body functions, and understand that your emotions play a big role. And again, like, anger is a good emotion. It gets a bad rap. Anger is there for you to fight for the underdog, to get out of a bad situation, or to create positive change in the world, or to do something creative with that. But where it becomes toxic is if you're going home kicking the dog, you start abusing alcohol or drugs, get road rage and those kinds of things, then that anger is no longer serving you. Right? So there's a misconception about some of these emotions. And our whole mission is to show people that, number one, if I could transform my life, you can too. But also, two, there's a simple practice that you could do. And you don't even have to believe in it, because one of the things that people say is, oh, you have to believe. I'm like, true, it always helps.
It's a good first start,
right? But I tell people, do the practices every day. Focus on some event that's gone on in your life, like mommy abandoned you or something like that, and see how you feel, And
your body doesn't really know when you're faking it.
Correct.
It's that smile thing. Like, you smile even when you're not happy, your brain's still going to release all those endorphins and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you can train yourself to do, it becomes real for you over time, I guess, is what I'm...
Well, I can say a real problem I believe we need to fix is that I'm staring at 3 empty soda cans that we need to refill.
I'm going to release some anger.
Yeah.
Shake it off.
Shake it off.
Shake that shit off.
All right, we're going to grab a refill, and we will be right back. Chase, I don't know about you, but it does feel like ever since COVID hit, we spend so much time in our homes, and our homes have kind of become our office, and it's been this kind of weird blend of professional and home. I find that occasionally it is difficult to become creative in the house. Sometimes you got to get out and you got to find a different space to kind of let that creativity fly. And we are excited to share with our listeners that if you are in the LA area, we have the solution for you. We are proudly sponsored by The Muse Rooms, which is a creative co-working space that is here. They have a Hollywood location and they have a Burbank location, 2 convenient locations for you, that is ready to serve all of your creative space needs. If you want to rent space for a day to work on that screenplay, or if you need to rent a conference room for a big meeting that you have with a team that doesn't meet regularly, the Muse Rooms has got you covered. It's a great space. It's a great owner. It's a great vibe too. It's just a really cool, you'll get points with the youngsters.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be cool for renting out.
It's
this
the hip
space.
spot to be, indeed.
It definitely is. So give the Muse Rooms a check if you for all of your creative co-working space needs at themuse, M-U-S-E, rooms.com. All right, and we are back with Chris Shelton, the Hollywood healer. So, as we were talking about before, obviously you found this calling to make this your profession, right? And I think in about 2013, you wrote a book.
Pause and open drinks live, because I think neither of us have ours open.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'll do the grape soda. I'll switch this time.
Yeah, I have classic root beer this time.
I'm doing tropical punch.
Ah.
Tropical
Ooh,
punch
nice.
is
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Oh, dude, that grape is delicious.
Told you, right?
That's where it's at. Yeah.
No, they have orange. They have cream soda. It tastes like cream soda.
one's probably
Nice. I like the grape better than tropical punch.
But doesn't the root beer taste like root beer? Like
I think my palate is messed up because of the grape.
Oh,
Because that
It tastes like grape root
did
beer?
not taste like root beer at all in that first sip.
okay.
You're like, give me another sip. I'll get there. Yeah. No, so
But
as I was
yes.
saying,
There it is.
obviously you found this calling to make this your profession, and then around I think 2013, you wrote a book on Qigong, right? And so, what was that? How did you kind of get to that space of there are things that I need to put in a book because they're just not out there, right? Things that I want to teach people in a mass form.
And let's name drop your book.
Yeah, it's called Qigong for Self-Refinement: Total Health with the 5 Elements.
Well, actually, now we're doing a 3rd edition of that.
Nice. Okay, so clearly the book's been a success.
Yeah, yes, because there's 2 books coming out. There's my new back book that's coming out September 24th, and then November 25th, the 3rd edition of the Qigong book is now called Chris Shelton's Easy Guide to Emotional Well-Being.
Oh, nice.
With Qigong.
Okay.
And because we're really directing it towards the mental health aspect for people.
Yeah.
But what brought about the first book was that in my weekly classes, Qigong classes, I would give handouts. Because when I teach a Qigong practice, I don't want people to think that it works just because, Chris says so, right? I want them to understand the deeper, what's going on behind the scenes. Medically, what's going on inside the body. Chemically, what's going on inside the body by doing the practice. So I give these handouts. If I was talking about the liver cleansing exercise, well, what is the liver function? Well, the liver controls this. What are clinical signs of liver imbalances? Oh, depression, anxiety disorders, migraines, menstrual disorders, hives, constipation. Those are clinical signs of liver imbalances from repressed rage, hatred, old anger, holding on to that stuff. So anyways, I had these handouts, and then I was supposed to be giving a talk at a convention in Florida. It was some kind of fitness talk, right? Some Fit Pros, talk. And so like, I need a product, right? So first of all, I hired somebody to get me prepared because I hadn't spoken. I wasn't doing any keynote speaking at the time. This is going to be my first event, so I wanted to come there. And so what my wife said, well, instead of giving all those handouts, all that information for free, why don't we just put it into a book?
Yeah, there you go.
So that's what happened. So
The business brain over there.
yeah.
Hey.
So the Qigong book actually came about. The first Qigong book for self-refinement first came out as a result of going to this event in Florida, and it's been a success. And then what was interesting was that I didn't realize that I had a big following in the Vietnamese community. And so what happened was that we're getting some life insurance. They had to come to our office to do a blood test. And I come out of the bathroom, and the practitioner who's administering the blood draw was this very nice Vietnamese gentleman. He goes, you're Chris Shelton. You're Kung Lee's doctor, Chinese medicine doctor. I said, how'd you know that? He goes, you're very big So we looked up at the time of the Google Analytics, and so besides the U.S., Vietnam was the next. So we actually translated that book into Vietnamese as well too. So there's a Vietnamese version of that book, and I got a compliment from a gentleman a couple years ago. There was a business shop owner, and he's Vietnamese, older guy. I gave him a copy of the book, and then a couple weeks later, I went back in, and then he says to me, as a child growing up in Vietnam, the philosophy that you're talking about in your book, you made it so easy. Growing up as a child, it was so difficult to understand what they were saying, but your book makes it so easy. So what I do in the Qigong book is I introduce people to the theory of what is Qi, what is yin and yang theory, what is 5-element theory, because all this stuff plays a role into now our 5 major organs of the body, right? And then why are we doing these practices? What is the purpose behind it? And to understand it, because when you understand it, then it makes sense to do it more, right? If I just tell you to do it, you're like, well, okay, but
just one more thing to add to my to-do list, right? Sure, I'll
Yeah.
get to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so just being able to, with that book, I was really able to start to show people that, hey, there's this, gently introduce them to the foundations of Chinese medicine and some of the things. Again, the liver. A lot of people don't realize that different organs are more active during certain times of the day. For example, your liver is most active between 1 and 3 a.m. So if I have somebody coming to me with insomnia, waking up at 1 or 3 a.m., I know it's their liver talking to me, or talking to them, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that we work with it, so besides, helping people in clinic or treating people in clinic, we give them these Qigong practices as well too. And then also tell them like, okay, but then I'll go into the face reading to be able to, call out like, oh, well, you hold on to your anger more than you express it, And, and going back to the anger thing, I think of all the clinical conditions that I see, the one thing like Lyme disease, the common thread with a lot of those clients is that they don't feel anger, don't know what it is. And doesn't mean that they had to have a rough childhood, just somewhere their psyche along the way disconnected. So the body says, all right, what am I supposed to do with this? You've disconnected from the emotion. What am I supposed to do? And so the body starts shutting down. Right, different parts of the body start shutting down. So that Qigong book was one of the first steps, and then we started also a YouTube channel, Chris Shelton Qigong, and I have the 30 days of Qigong on there. It's like you're taking 30 weeks with me at my studio in San Jose. So each day I talk about the practice, why you're doing it according to Chinese medicine. Each day builds on top of the next. But then what we started doing is I started filming different videos on specific conditions. What is the etiology behind the condition? And then how to fix it yourself. Recognize what is the emotional component of it. And the feedback and the responses that we've gotten have been tremendous from people from around the world. And so we're just, so from that, what happened was that with the 30 days of Qigong, that's how this third edition of this new Qigong book came out. Because I wanted the new Qigong book to match the 30 days. So there's 30 practices in this new edition.
Nice.
And so it corresponds. So here now you have a video, now you have the written practice, and you have a deeper explanation as to why.
I think one of the coolest things, in our research that we learned that both of you guys do, right, is that I think it's so cool that you're attempting to make Qigong accessible for everybody, right?
Yes.
COVID didn't slow you guys down.
No.
And you started the Qi Club,
Yes.
right, which is kind of this online thing where you can take Zoom classes or whatever, right? So it's like, if you're listening and you're like, oh, I don't live in LA, this is going to be a problem. It's not, right? It's accessible and you can do it online. So COVID didn't slow you down. What was kind of the thought process of let's translate this curriculum to online classes that we can talk to people online and do Zoom and all that stuff?
So what was amazing is, like I said, we have these government contracts with the employee wellness department. So we're in charge of the 33,000 employees for employee wellness. So pre-pandemic, I was going in giving talks to trauma nurses and doctors on disease prevention, going to the jails, sheriff's department, social services department, stuff like that. And so we're doing Qigong classes also. We started doing Tai Chi and Qigong classes or yoga, sound healing classes online before this whole thing happened, before COVID came about. So we already were tapped into that.
Yeah.
And then what happened was that friend of mine, Eric the trainer, when everything shut down and by the way, I was still commuting back and forth from San Jose to LA. My practice was off the hook because when doctors were sent, because we were treating patients with COVID successfully.
Wow.
So when doctors were saying go home and don't take some Advil or whatever, I was telling my patients, no, come in because we have an answer. So my practice was over the top.
Wow.
Over the top. And then the sad thing about it though is, and we actually got the heads up because of these contracts. We actually got the heads up before things shut down. We also got to see the real numbers of the suicide increase, the child abuse increase, the alcohol relapse, the spousal abuse increase that happened as a result of this mayhem that was going on.
Yeah, because everybody was locked in, right?
Locked in.
Yeah.
And especially for children who their only place of hope was school to get away from the abuse.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now you're putting them in the place with the perpetrator that's doing this abuse. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's a cause that was near and dear to your heart, right? You knew.
Yeah. And so anyway, so what Eric the trainer did was that he started the Sleek Ninja workout. It was like, I think once or twice a day, 5 days a week. And he'd get these celebrities on. So, because he's a funny guy, very charismatic, funny guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so
You got to be as a personal trainer because people hate you for, 10 more push-ups. Like, come on, man. Yeah, yeah.
So you'll be doing leg lifts and it's like 1, 2. Next thing, be talking to Phil Collins or something like that. Like, hey, Phil, what's going on? Blah, 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 right? So you'd have these different celebrities, rock and roll, bands on and stuff like that, Journey, or something like. And so while you're doing these workouts, right, then you'd have these different people on and he made it fun. And then he had puppets.
Yes.
He had
Nice.
puppets. So he had puppets, right? And so anyway, so then what he did was he started these 7-day challenges. One was a 7-day pillow challenge where you had to be in bed by 7 o'clock. Then he started the 7-day curfew challenge where you had to stop eating by 6 p.m. Then he did the 7-day cheat challenge. And by the way, at the time, this was all free. And so we did the 7-day cheat challenge, and it got such an enormous response for me doing this that I continued on and started then a weekly, Monday through Thursday, was teaching these Qigong classes. And then what happened was that, and again, we're doing it for free because we saw how many people were losing their jobs and stuff like that and, had no income coming in or whatever. And so we were doing this just to keep people moving. So the synergy that Eric and I had together was that he made people look beautiful from the outside, and I did it from the inside. So that was
Again, that inside-out approach, right? Yeah.
I mean, you need both. You need physical exercise. You need to eat right. You need to hydrate. You need to sleep right, and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to say that Qigong is the only thing. So the body is always talking to you. It's always talking. Don't ignore those little things. Don't ignore those little signs and symptoms because the body's way of talking to you. Or the body is always talking to you. So again, what we're out after our mission here is to be able to empower people, to show people a way out of suffering, mental anguish, and really give them the tools necessary and be able for it to make sense.
Yeah.
And it's not some kind of cult.
No.
I'm just going to say that. It's not a cult. It's not a religious belief structure. Or at least the style that Qigong I teach is not some kind of religious
I don't know
structure.
how you could have been listening to this entire interview and come to that conclusion, but that's just an uninformed opinion.
That's not the vibe we've been getting at all. And I think that may just be some fright and fear of Eastern medicine and how it gets the mystique around it all the time. I wanted to turn back a little bit. You mentioned some of the practices, the concept of yin and yang. That's sort of light and dark, and I've read a little bit of the I Ching and some of those things. So I'm always fascinated with that concept and the understanding of life happens in seasons, things change, accepting that change and leaning into that change and leading the flow of that change. Understanding the concept of yin and yang, if you could go back and change what had happened to you when you were younger, do you think you would still be doing what you're doing today? And if so, why?
Wow. So I had different paths that I could have gone. I started becoming a butcher. I did at age 15 and a half. I did my AP studies in art. And then I also, too, started my sophomore year in high school. I would go to CCOC, which was an adult educational school. So I go to high school part-time, and then a bus would pick me up and some other students. And that's where I got my Class A state brake license, my license for overhauling engines, cylinder head reconditioning, tune-ups, and electrical systems. So I thought, okay, if I don't make it as a butcher, I'm going to be an artist. If I don't make it as an artist, I'm going to be a mechanic, right? I mean, because I was already, because of how I grew up, I always had to have a backup plan. Always had to have some kind of backup to make sure, right? So healer was never even on my radar. But also, I think in high school, I did Air Force ROTC. And so I was planning on joining the Special Forces pararescue operations because I liked helping people, and also it's kind of extreme. So I I heard about what those guys did in Vietnam was just sounded amazing to me. So I thought, for sure. And then what happened was that I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and I was very codependent. Didn't realize I was codependent till years later. And
hindsight's always 20/20, right?
So I ended up not joining. and the Marine recruiters and the Air Force recruiters, man, they just show up at malls and find me somehow. Like, how are you guys finding me? And luckily, I guess it wasn't meant to be, right? But where I'm at now, would I change the past of no? Because the nice thing about this, all the things that I've talked about, and this is just skimming the surface, what I've talked about the trauma in my life. When a patient comes in or when I'm giving a talk to somebody, I can relate to them at some level, right? I can establish rapport.
Yeah, you've been there.
Been there.
Yeah.
I understand what you're going through. It may not be exactly identical or whatever, but I can understand the suffering that you're going through and the pain that you're having.
So your new book that's coming out September 24th is a little bit more focused, right, than a holistic approach. It's your easy guide to fixing neck and back pain, which if you're over 30, you have neck and back pain. It happens, right? So tell me, I mean, obviously you've been working on the book for quite some time, but what was the thought process of focusing specifically on the neck and the back? Is that kind of the most common thing you see in your patients and the people you train with? And
yeah. So what happened was this book was supposed to be a bigger book, and it was the first part of the book was supposed
to include the arms as well. I know, I get it.
Well, yeah. The first part of the book was supposed to be on common conditions and how to fix it yourself, how to fix a cold yourself, how to the flu yourself, migraines yourself. Middle part of the book was supposed to be on back and neck issues. The third part of the book was supposed to be on more severe issues like trigeminal facial neuralgia, MS, these other types of things. How to deal with cancer and all that kind of stuff. But then what happened was our second editor said, Chris, you're going to end up with a textbook. And I'm like, I don't want a textbook.
Nobody wants to buy a tome. Doorstop.
The DSM whatever already exists.
Yeah, the DSM, right. Yeah. DSM, right. Of all the diseases I see, back issues are number one. It does not discriminate, though, nowadays with age. Women tend to get it more because of childbirth. And what happened was that I was really confused. Because I was flying out to Chicago and stuff like that, seeing these young basketball players that have a chance to play for the NBA. Doctors were telling them that, well, you have lumbar stenosis, you'll never play ball again. And I have them up running in 15 minutes. I have videos. And one time flying back, I had to ask myself, well, gosh, when I was a kid back in the 70s, the only people that seemed to get back issues were couch potato or people that are obese. Nowadays, it does not discriminate if you're young, if you're in shape, or not in shape, if you're the athlete. It does not discriminate. And what I finally realized was that our sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the nervous system, which is in charge of our fight and flight, is now being triggered all the time. When God developed our bodies, that sympathetic nervous system was meant to get you out of your house if it was on fire, or if a bear was chasing you to be able to run away. That sympathetic nervous system does not know the difference between being chased by a bear, running late for an appointment, seeing something on the news or social media that's troubling to you.
Now it generates ad dollars.
Yes. And being late for or not being able to pay your bills. It does not know the difference. And so what happens is that there's a main muscle in your groin. It's called the psoas muscle, P-S-O-A-S. This muscle is about the size of your fist. It attaches to your leg bone, your femur. It wraps up from the groin around the back, attaches to the lower part of the back, all the way up to the mid-back. This thing is massive.
Right.
This is what controls your back. A lot of people think that, oh, shoot, my spine just sits there by itself.
Right.
Nope.
Big old support ribbon.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally is. And so what happens is that sympathetic nervous system, if it thinks it's in protection mode, guess what? It's going to pull on this psoas muscle because why? It wants to pull you and round you forward to protect the delicate organs here. If somebody was attacking you, you don't do a back bend.
Right, you hunch over, right?
You
Yeah.
Here's all the soft part.
Yeah. Get all my tender parts, please.
Yeah.
So, no. And that's why when people have especially lower back issues, yes, they have pain in the lower back, but the reality is that the psoas is pulling them forward. And so the whole idea of this book then is like, okay, for the low back, the mid back, and the neck region, what are the organs involved with it? So when a patient comes in, for example, so we do certain techniques on them, which I teach in the book, for example, that help to open up the psoas and stuff. But then we treat the organs that are responsible. Then we go after the emotional part. And one of the things, the only time a back issue is not easy to fix is when I have a woman that has a lot of resentment towards a male figure. That's the only time. But otherwise, one of the things that throws people off is that when I say that back issues are easy to fix, they're like, what? I've been dealing with this for 20 years. Like, no, there is an answer. There is an answer to it.
Or you've been dealing with it a certain way for 20 years, right?
Right. Or you've been telling, and one of my case studies, and the only reason why I'm saying her name is because she did a testimonial for me. Her name is Patty, and this was years ago. Patty worked in high tech, and she had two lumbar fusions, was still in chronic pain, lived on all kinds of pain medications, was doing steroidal injections even after the surgeries. And she came in, and I think it was the second visit because there's a certain technique that I do called the psoas stretch. And I have people walk afterwards. And you have to walk because you have to tell the muscle, oh, it's supposed to be elongated and relaxed. And not supposed to be all tight, right? So I was having her walk, and she starts crying. I was like, oh, shoot. What did I do?
Yeah.
I said, what's going on? And she said, it's not what's wrong. She said, it's what's right. She goes, this is the first time in 20 years I've had no pain, right? One of my other favorite case studies, his name is Don. He was an ex-Navy captain. He reluctantly came to me as a referral. His L4, L5 discs were gone.
Yeah.
Just like shredded
down to nothing. He was 79 years old.
Okay.
79 years old. And because he was an ex-Navy captain, he was reluctant to come see me because he thought I was some kind of quack. And so anyway, so I do these techniques on him. I show him how to do the psoas stretch, which is in the book. And because he was ex-military, he followed the orders. I said, okay, I want you to, I want you to do
That's how you got him. Yeah.
He won't like it, but he'll do it.
He'll do it, yeah. Okay, I want you to do this stretch, and I want you to walk a mile every day. That's what I told him. And he did it. And
Hey, saluted. Yeah.
and by age 80, his L4 and L5 discs grew back.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So what does that tell us? That tells us that your DNA, even at that age, wants to be healthy.
Yeah.
What happens in our bodies is our bodies get stuck. And it becomes a vicious cycle. Unless you can teach somebody how to to get the body unstuck, then it'll continue that way. And so people say, well, that's impossible. I said, no, I have his medical, he's given me the okay to talk about his case, and it's there at age 80. But also, too, in this book, I'm integrating East and West together. Basic physiology, very basic. And then also integrating. I go into a little bit deeper in this book of yin and yang, 5 elements, which continues to unfold. And then I go into organ function, organ dysfunction, and what that all shows up and what it looks like. And so if you're a geek like me that enjoys this kind of stuff, you can read that part.
Absolutely.
If you want to just fix it, you just go to the section on your back, because we have it broken down into 3 parts, lower lumbar. So we cover, for example, lumbar stenosis. And all a stenosis is that there's a closing of the opening for which the nerve comes out of the spine. Like you could have a stenosis of your artery walls, for example. Drop leg syndrome, which is a condition where the nerves have been injured and their atrophy is created as a result. Then we have bulging discs, ruptured discs, okay? But also in that lower back section as well, too, I cover knee pain. And I also cover plantar fasciitis and Achilles heel syndrome, because a lot of times it has to deal with this psoas as well too. Then we have the thoracic spine, and we look at, okay, well, what organs are responsible for that? You know, when someone has a side stitch, they go to the chiropractor, have the rib popped in, and then in reality, the what's happened is that the liver chi, when a person has repressed anger or improper diet, lifestyle habit, that liver actually will expand. That's what pushes out the rib. So that's why you get it popped in. A few days later, it pops back out again. You fix the liver discord, and guess what? The rib will stay.
It shrinks enough that it'll stay. Yeah.
And then the third part of the book is about your cervical spine. So frozen shoulder, cervical issues, cervical stenosis, like the cervical arthritis. And again, but it's not just talking about it. It's like, these are the steps to take. I talk about cupping in there, because people will say, oh, I have a guy that does cupping. No, if you understand the function of the points, because the problem is that if you just group a whole bunch of cups in somebody's shoulder, sure, it may help with their shoulder issue somewhat. But if you're trying to go after a specific condition, all these 365 points on the body all have a different function and an interconnection with other points, other organs inside the body, different parts of the body. And so what you don't realize is when you put all those cups over all those points, you cancel out the function of those other points.
Sure, you got to be strategic about it, right? Yeah.
There has to be a methodology behind doing it, not just haphazardly. So I talk about here, we could cup certain points on our ribs, because most of the time you never see people cupping the ribs, because there are some contraindicated points, but also but these points are very powerful. And so first we teach the techniques to do, then we teach the meditations, the Qigong meditations to do. Then we teach, okay, well, you could do cupping, you could do a technique on gua sha yourself, and these techniques then reinforce the healing of your back issue.
Sounds amazing. Sounds like an incredible book.
Yeah,
I mean, tons and tons of resources.
It sounds like the book is written for anybody who has a back and neck. So
yes.
It sounds like everybody
Your
I know
audience is wide.
needs to read this book, right?
Right. Now I've known quite a few people that are spineless, but
yeah. So they still have backs and necks.
Right, yeah.
Maybe not.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. September is Pain Awareness Month. Do you have any messages for men specifically during Pain Awareness Month?
The main thing for men is that we need to express more. That's first and foremost. And whether it's talking to, and the interesting thing about us men is that the way we communicate best is shoulder to shoulder. So go on a hike with somebody, to talk to somebody, find men's support groups, and recognize that the emotions that you have are there once again as a barometer. And if you are suffering from chronic pain, and maybe you are addicted to food, maybe you are addicted to alcohol, well, what is the root of that? I know for alcohol addiction especially, that the root of that addiction is resentments. Get to the root of your resentments. Talk about it. Do an inventory. Some people disagree with the 12-step program. I think that I'm not promoting AA or anything like that. I just think that everybody should do a 4th-step inventory. Why? Because it's an inventory of your resentments. That's at least one of the steps.
Yeah.
So recognize that there are tools out there for us to be able to live a pain-free life. Don't try to self-diagnose yourself. You know, like I said in the beginning, talk to your physician about any of these practices that I'm talking about before, executing them or whatever, to make sure that they're safe for you. And for the most part, they are. And I am going to say this, though, about back issues and why it's important to go see your physician first.
Yeah. Sometimes
cancer could grow on the spine. So sometimes you think it's just a low back issue, and guess what? There's something more going on there. So you have to get it. You have to get it checked. Don't try to self-diagnose. Don't misunderstand me when I'm saying, well, do this stretch in this book or do this Qigong technique. You still need to get an assessment. And when the assessment comes back and says, oh, well, you have bulging discs. Okay, well, then we know that we could fix it. Learn to listen to your body. That's the next one. Your body is always talking to you. Your body's always telling you something.
Do you find that men do that less than women?
Totally.
Oh my goodness, yes, of course. The I'm fine and power through is
yeah.
incredibly masculine trait.
Yeah. Men hold on to it more. And a really quick thing, like I had this Japanese client, this attorney, and he was married to this really rambunctious redhead. Two totally opposite. Talk about yin and yang. He was like very reserved, polite, appropriate. She was like outspoken, loud, and normally
opposites attract, right?
Yeah. And so he had a shoulder issue, and Japanese men are known not to show their emotions. They also have the highest rates of suicides and the highest rate of heart attacks.
Yeah.
So this gentleman, what had happened was I was working on his shoulder, doing certain techniques, and the pain is getting worse. He's face down. And now I'm scrambling. And I'm telling him, you have to let it go. So he stands up off the table, and instead of letting it go, he goes like this. He takes his hands into his chest and pushes it down, like he's pushing something down to his groin or to his belly button. He's all...
burying it.
And I'm like, you have to let this go. And he wouldn't face his wife. His wife is in the treatment room too. He wouldn't face his wife.
Whoa.
I like see the tears welling up, but he won't let it go. I said, you have to let it go. And I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I'm sweating now because this guy is in excruciating pain. It's only getting worse.
Yeah.
And finally he broke. He broke. And guess what? Shoulder pain went away immediately. So again, we want you to be able to take these practices, seek out alternative means, to be able to really empower yourself to help yourself, because you don't have to live with pain, and that's the nice thing. But again, as men have to not lose our masculinity. We were talking about this earlier today, is that I consider myself a masculine guy. But I also will cry at Dancing with the Stars, right? And like I said earlier, I sew, I cook. My daughter's ballet shoes. She didn't go to her mom or anything else. She came to me to have me sew on the straps for her ballet shoes.
Nice.
Right?
There you go. Nice.
So we could have what they consider a feminine type, or whatever that is, and embrace it, because you need both. It's yin and yang. You need both. You can't be hard all
balance,
the time.
Right? There's got to be a balance.
Got to be a balance, yeah. If you're always walking around with your chest puffed and, aggro and stuff like that, well, guess what? Eventually something's going to give out, whether it's your back, your heart, an aneurysm, something.
Yeah.
Right? So learn how to express more. Practice these Qigong practices. Again, you don't have to believe in it. Like the takeaway of doing the heart healing sound. We also call that the dry cry. Try it. It's so easy to do, and it's one of the most profound things that I could give to you, because you could take it with you anywhere, and you don't have to, you don't have to suffer. And the more that you recognize your pain body, which is your emotional body, then you'll recognize how that will show up as inflammation and disease. And then once that happens, once you have that recognition, then we could reverse the situation.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it sounds like incredibly practical advice that can work for anybody who wants to get better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also recognizing, too, that our feeling emotions is not a weakness.
No.
At all.
I want that to pervade into social life. Like, having access to the complete realm of emotions is not masculine or feminine. That is a completely natural human thing that everyone needs to do all the time.
Totally.
That's
Totally. Yeah. And to say that you're less of a man because you do cry, or you do like to cook or whatever,
that's as outdated as those 70s kitchen tiles.
It's my dad's house, right?
Yeah,
that's why just like how I remodeled myself, I remodeled his kitchen.
That's exactly right. That opinion needs to be remodeled as well, I think, in 2024. Yeah. Well, as we start to wind down here, I mean, again, if you're listening to this interview, I mean, you want to follow Chris, you want to find out what's going on. Where you seem fairly accessible, and I mean that as a compliment, that you want people to learn this stuff. Where can people find you online so that they can connect with you and start to follow the practice?
Yeah, so go to SheltonQigong.com, and Qigong is spelled QIGONG.com. All the social media handles are on there, so Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube is all the same. It's all Chris Shelton Qigong. The TikTok, which is really blown up, surprisingly, is Chris_Shelton_Qigong. And what's fun about the TikTok page is that people are submitting their photographs for me to read their face.
Oh.
Actually, this last year, I made it to the 4th round of tryouts on America's Got Talent for that.
Nice.
Which was
amazing.
Which was a random event, but one of the executive producers actually had found found me on TikTok, and something I was talking about a person's face. She's like, "Wow, he's actually describing me exactly. I have that feature on my face too."
Wow.
So, anyways, so Shelton.
I've just been sitting over here terrified about you reading our faces the entire time. I just want to make that statement.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I normally don't start. I normally don't read people's faces until there's a personality quirk, like something. And one of the things about the TikTok, also in reading the people's faces, one of the things that I like about what Dave Chappelle says, he goes, "I don't punch down." And so when people send me photographs or want me to read certain celebrities or especially political figures, I'm not going to punch down, regardless who it is.
Yeah.
We all have positive traits, and they don't call them negative traits. And we all have things we need to work on, right? And so, but the face reading, and I teach a course in this too, the face reading, it's fun to be able to read other people. It's great for personal and business relationships, but it's really an introspection in yourself. So please reach out on SheltonQigong.com. Please go to the YouTube channel, Chris Shelton Qigong, and you have to put Chris Shelton Qigong. Otherwise, if you just put Chris Shelton, an anti-Scientology guy comes on.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, we don't want that. Yeah. We don't want that guy. Not you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, and if you're online following Chris, why don't you give us a follow as well? We're on Instagram at 2 Drink Maximum, TWO.
You wrote it down and you still messed up.
I'm still reading it. MAXIMUM, 2 Drink Maximum. You know how to spell it. We're on wherever you can find social
You can
stuff.
also now find us on YouTube and YouTube Music, which is at 2 Drink DRINKMAX.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a new one we've jumped into.
We'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Muse Rooms here in Hollywood. Great co-working space. So thank you to everyone at the team at the Muse Rooms for that. Usually we have a fun sign-off that we like to do, but as we've done research, you guys have a really fun sign-off that you do for your videos.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think instead of us doing our normal sign-off, which is simply just cheers, why don't we let you guys sign us off? Because I like your sign-off. It's fun.
Okay. So this is how we sign off on the Chi Club and such. And so using sign language, I was the one that started this. You get in there, babe. Ready?
Get in there on the mic.
Okay, right? Okay, so how do we spell love?
Like this. Ready? All together.
All together.
Yeah.
LOVE. And we will see you later.
So cool. Thank you
That's
guys so
amazing.
much for coming. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Cheers.